G'day, today is July 2nd, 2025. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. I'm joined, as usual, by my two good friends here, Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford.
Regular Wednesday slot.
Yes. And Western Standard senior Alberta columnist, Cory Morgan.
Always a pleasure.
Actually, maybe a bit of housekeeping first. We should announce that at a to-be-exactly confirmed date in August, Nigel Hannaford is going to be retiring for a second time in his career.
Hail and farewell.
You've done a hell of a job, and you've unfortunately just left me with a pickle of trying to find someone who can fill those shoes.
Good luck.
Well, we're going to miss Nigel very much, but I don't know.
Well, for the confidence of viewers, he'll be for another 5-6 weeks anyway.
Indeed. Okay, well, two great Canadians, Bonnie Henry and Theresa Tam, are being honored with Canada's highest honor, entrance into the Order of Canada. We'll be talking about them, and I think we're standing by. Don Cherry is being put into, right? Finally,
Sure.
yes, yeah.
That'll be the day.
So, yeah, the kind of Laurentian creme de la creme that is the governing body of the Order of Canada, deciding to put Bonnie Henry and Theresa Tam to join them in this highest of high honors. Alberta announced just today it is creating its own police force. I think it's called the Alberta Sheriff's Police Service. Danielle Smith says this is not to replace the RCMP. Critics of the sovereignty agenda say it is to replace the RCMP. And people like myself who love the sovereignty agenda say, I hope it's to replace the RCMP. The old Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta might be back. Two exiled MLAs from the UCP have registered the name for the Progressive Conservative Party with Elections Alberta. We'll get into if they actually technically will succeed in that or not, but they might. They have said that the UCP is so corrupt and so big spending that the answer to it is to bring back the party with the highest spending and the most corruption in the history of Alberta. Before we get to that, though, we're going to start, Nigel, with elbows up. Mark Carney promising he's going to fight the bad orange man, and we're going to do what we want, and he can't stop us. And then he folded like a cheap tent in trade negotiations. I think less than a day after saying the digital services tax is here. We're going to impose it on Canadian consumers using American products. It's here forever, and Donald Trump can't stop us. Trump walks away from negotiations. Carney folded like a cheap tent.
Yeah, I was just hoping that Mr. Trump's next demand will have something to do with supply management. So look, the digital services tax. It's actually a Trudeau-era legislation that was due to come into effect yesterday, June the 30th. It was retroactive to 2022. But what it was to apply to companies that operate online marketing and online advertising services, social media platforms. And
streaming like Netflix.
Well, this is how it would have gone. Supposing that you had actually booked into Airbnb, and then you had when you got there, you decided to sit down and relax with something from Netflix. And by the way, you had Amazon drop off something, or a fast food drop off something. You'd have been paying 3% on all of that.
Yeah,
that's a digital services tax. You order online, you pay the tax. So the thing was that everybody said, oh, well, it just folded like a cheap wheat. He certainly did fold, and he should have. But, I mean, the thing was, it's not like this would have been taxing American companies.
No, it's taxing Canadians using it.
Canadians to use American companies. So that's like sort of putting a tariff on American food and then saying, there, we showed them. No, you didn't. You showed us that we're now paying $1 for something that used to cost 75 cents. So this was never a good thing for Canadians, even even if you sort of like the idea that your people shouldn't be able to just come in and do business here without paying tax, we would have been the ones paying the tax. So that's what they did. And when Mr. Trump was notified about it, somebody, I don't know, maybe Howard Levitt walked in and said, "You know what they're doing up there in Canada? Damn digital service tax. And by the way, sir, it's retroactive to 2022, so some of your biggest fans are going to have to come up with a couple of $2 billion to give Mr. Carney." And he said, "Oh, deal's off. We're not talking to those guys until they get rid of it." And so it's gone. So I think really the takeaway from this one, Derek, is if you want something, never mind talking to your MP, never mind talking to your lawyer, send a note to the White House, and things happen.
Yeah, the kind of the beginning of this tax, came from Trudeau before he became prime minister. He was kind of talking about this, and Stephen Harper, will recall, talked about Trudeau's plan for a Netflix tax, and the media roundly laughed. They were rolling in laughter at this crazy conspiracy of Stephen Harper claiming that Trudeau would impose a digital services tax or a Netflix tax. And then, of course, they did impose the Netflix tax. This has been coming down the pipe for a long time. The Americans have been unhappy about it under the Biden administration as well. They've been unhappy about it. The Biden administration did not really do much besides huff and puff about it. But it was due to come in. The Canadian government said this is our business, this is not America's business, even though it acts as a de facto tariff against American products paid for by Canadians. And the Canadian government has rightfully been pointing out to the Trump administration that, well, you know who pays tariffs? It's American consumers who are making life more expensive. That argument does not seem to have applied in reverse when the Liberals were talking about this tax. But this was largely pushed by the Quebec cultural industry that likes to keep out anything American. And we were just 24 hours before, the Liberals were adamant. No, this is here to stay. This is happening. Nothing you can do about it. Trump administration walked away from the negotiating table, and then they just folded. Cory, the Liberals, I've seen put out some propaganda around this, claiming that they played Trump here. How have the Liberals played Trump here?
They're trying to polish a turd, to be blunt, and you can't do it. But they're trying to save a little face where there's none to be saved. I guess there's people will take the statements out of the Liberals at face value. The ones we see online, they'll just believe, somehow do some mental contortionism to call this a win. And they have no other answer for it. I mean, it's a terrible loss. It's a backtrack. It shows weakness, unfortunately, in the face of the guy who is the biggest bully on the international block right now. And we kind of know that when you capitulate to a bully, he doesn't stop. He pushes further. Eventually, Carney has got to actually show this elbows up thing of his. I mean, as we said, we're not too sad to see the end of the digital services tax.
No.
Anyways,
it's a win for Canada. It's a win for consumers in Canada. It's a loss for the government.
Yeah, but the point of principle on the part of the government showing that they can be slapped over on things they said were not going to bend it, or in the course of 24 hours, Trump's just going to come for another bite at something. Mm-hmm. And they're really going to start building a revenue problem soon because they were counting on a big gouge out of this, and they're not going to get it.
$7 billion over 5 years, I think it was. Wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that, or as much as I think I saw over, $3 billion a year, perhaps. It's hard to tell. But I mean, it's a big chunk of money when he's been spending like crazy, mm-hmm. and he's not cutting anything, and he's just going to be printing money. They're in a bad position.
Well, let's talk about what might come next. Let's pray Canada continues to get out negotiated here, because the more Trump demands in concessions from Canada, the better it seems to be for Canadians. Trump demanded that Canadians get a tax cut. And we got a tax cut. Okay, that's an odd thing. But the next big pea under the mattress in these negotiations is supply management, mm-hmm. as you touched on, Nigel. Yeah. Canada's Soviet-style quota command and control system of dairy, eggs, and poultry, and it's particularly most damaging in the poultry. In the dairy side of it. Trump won Wisconsin. He won some of these dairy, not Vermont, but he won, Wisconsin's the big one. And they want to be able to export into Canada freely. That's impossible with the trade, with the supply management system. They're demanding it go. Now, the Liberals have said it's not up for negotiation. It's off the table. Elbows up. But they already said that about digital services tax. But the Liberals voted with the Bloc and half of the cowardly half of the Conservative caucus to pass a Bloc bill that makes it illegal to negotiate away supply management and have any kind of free trade in dairy, etc. But ostensibly, the trade bill will be a bill, and a bill can amend other bills. So I'm not sure that bill that the Liberals just passed with some of the other parties, including half the Conservatives, actually is going to... You can't stop them from talking about it. No bill could stop politicians from negotiating it. But the final deal will then be put into legislative form to be brought before Parliament. And that can simply abolish that bill they just passed.
Exactly. It's just legislation.
Have you given any consideration to just having sort of a chyron across the bottom of the screen says, got a problem with Canada? Here's the White House number, called Gunner. All right, we should do that just to make a point. And so the thing with supply management, maybe one of you guys can tell me what it is that keeps it alive, because there's something like 10,000 dairy farmers. And before I go any further, I eat cheese, I like butter, and I drink milk, and it's I got nothing but good things to say about well-run professional farmers doing a good job. But the thing is, you have to buy into it. You have to buy the license. It's like the way the taxis work. You have to buy your license before you get in, and then you're told how much you can produce, how much you can sell, and what price you're going to get for it. So as long as they don't have expensive tastes, they are extremely secure in what they do. Good for them. It's worked for a long time. There's no animus here, but there are 10,000 people producing milk and butter in Canada, and there are 40 million people who need it and need to pay perhaps as much as 5 times the price. If you go onto the Government of Canada website and look up the trade page, you will find that they admit that they charge as much as 230% tariffs on American dairy products. That's, I guess, what it takes to keep the Canadian farmers competitive and secure. And I just say, 230% is clearly too much. I don't know whether 23% wouldn't be a bit much, but 230%, that $10 a pound, $9 a pound butter shouldn't be costing $9 a pound. It should be costing a lot less.
And I just filed a column on that, actually. You're stuck shaking yes. So it's been a pet issue for here quite some.
This is what we're saying. I mean, I do not understand. Therefore, I understand that the dairy lobby has got an incredibly well organized system for keeping MPs on side. That's good for them. Clever. I admire something professionally done, but it's not working for the rest of us, and I don't know why nobody moves on it.
I got 2 kids. My 3-year-old still drinks hot bottles. I go through so much bloody milk. I've put in it. Each one of my kids, I think, is put through a dairy farmer's kid through college. I mean, it is criminal what we are paying, and a lot of our stuff is not great quality. Like butter, Canadian butter is crap. You got to buy the European stuff if you want good butter.
And people don't see the whole cost of it. When I owned my pub, one of my biggest sellers actually was pizza. I sold loads of pizza. I bought $10,000 a month worth of cheese. Cheese is expensive. That's the most expensive part of a pizza. And we actually had a rebate program that was given to restaurants. You had to register for it, and they would knock off about 10% of the price for commercial mozzarella for my restaurant because they had a cheese smuggling problem happening in Montreal. This is how bad it is. This is how absurd as it is. If you look it up, organized crime mafia was smuggling cheese from New York into Montreal, and when you're talking 10,000 a month,
Which organization? The mafia?
the actual
Or Dairy Canada?
yeah, well, that's the other mafia, right? The guy's coming to your back door. Hey, I got some mozzarella here, and
It's one cartel undermining another.
They were paying cash out the back door for cheese. It's that when the system is collapsing that badly that you've got underground cheese markets going on.
It's the irony here. It used to be that we were distilling whiskey, sneaking it into the northern states, and now they're producing cheese and sneaking it into this.
Government creates contraband. This supply system is just terrible.
Well, and judging by how seriously they take the government takes the issue, I mean, your decoy should be drugs. Maybe the cheese.
Yeah, you won't get much problem with pot, but as long as there's cheese hiding underneath all that weed,
Yeah.
So what have we got? Like speedboats full of cheese zipping across Lake
I
Superior?
think they were using truckers, but who knows? It might have been that exciting. The cheese interdiction force with dogs sniffing it out across. It's just bizarre, but we also know the regional aspect. Quebec dominates the production of the dairy industry, and there's the only thing that makes federal government MPs shiver more than taking on Indigenous people is taking on Quebec with anything. I mean, speaking about capitulation, what Quebec asks for, Quebec gets.
Yeah, but they got these dairy farms in Ontario as well. They're not silent on it.
No, Quebec benefits most by having because the quota system locks in incumbent players, and that has always been to the benefit of Quebec proportionally.
We can't expand ours. I mean, in Saskatchewan, Alberta, we got the space, the cattle, the feed. We could be a dairy powerhouse.
Yeah,
but we can't expand our quotas.
Our dairy farmers, I get it. I get hate mail from dairy farmers all the time and poultry farmers when I rail against supply management. If you are in a supply managed industry in Alberta, you stand to gain from the end of supply management, particularly in dairy, because you're not going to be subject to the same kind of quotas anymore. If you're good at what you're doing, if you're not competitive, no matter where you are in Canada, the end of supply management is probably the end of your farm. But if you are competitive, if you are good and you're in a position to expand your operation with the end of the quota system, you stand to make a lot of money. Be a much bigger operation.
And that's it. It's a terrible, terrible policy. And speaking of, like you're talking about, Trump could save us from ourselves with this one. It's something that we couldn't accomplish domestically over decades of this stupid policy. Maybe Trump is going to do it.
Well, he saved us on our military. Yeah. Canada's getting is going to rebuild its military because Trump demanded it. He's given us a tax cut from the DST. We might get supply management. I mean, he doesn't need to take over Canada. He's already dictating the policies here, and so far, they're kind of for the better.
Elbows up.
Maybe he'll take on our immigration system next.
That could go different. He's just going to start dumping them here on us.
Oh, God, yeah. Okay. Well, let's bring it real close to home here. So the UCP removed from its caucus 2 MLAs. Peter Guthrie, he represents Airdrie Cochrane. He kind of went to war with Danielle Smith and the UCP over some of the questions around some healthcare contracts and the restructuring there. Perhaps he's correct. Perhaps he's not. We haven't seen evidence of it, but maybe he's onto something. I don't know. The other one, not very well known. He's from, I think, the Slave Lake region. What's his name?
Sinclair, is it?
Yeah, Sinclair.
Sinclair. He was removed.
Scott Sinclair.
Scott Sinclair. He was removed because he said he would not vote for the UCP's budget, which is a confidence issue. If you don't vote for your party's budget, you are by convention. You can't be a part of it. It's not like those are never a free.
I think he went further. He actually voted with the NDP against it. He didn't just not vote. He
voted against it. Yeah. Most things I think should be free votes, but the budget never is. It's a matter of confidence, constitutionally. So these two guys have been in exile for some time, sitting as independents. Cory, they're telling us the PC Party's back. Explain this.
Well, this isn't new. I mean, we see this with conservatives when they go into exile. You're quite familiar with it. Mm-hmm. It's a lonely place to be if you're just a 1 or 2 or 3 person caucus in the corner of the legislature. You get limited resources. You have difficulty getting time. So in BC, they formed a new party out there with the ones that have broken off. And now these two are announcing that they're going to form a party, I guess, to try and strengthen themselves and maybe build something that they feel would bring people over. That's not that surprising, really, when they've been sitting, as you said, in the wilderness. It doesn't look like they're going to get back.
No.
But why they would want to go back to the soured PC brand, I'm flummoxed with. Like, you're taking on the baggage of people who got basically kicked out in shame. You know, people haven't forgotten Alison Redford's visage, and they don't look at it fondly. And you guys are embracing that brand. It reminds me of David Orchard, you know, trying federally. He just beat himself against the wall over there. This is a dead brand. You're trying to resurrect. At least come up with a new party name and say it's something better. But
well, you know, Cory, not only is it a dead brand, but you have to wonder about the forethought that went into this, because I don't think that it is legally possible to revive that Progressive Conservative Party.
Okay, so there's a little bit of
tells you there's
a,
but it just tells you about this kind of the wisdom that went into this proposal.
Okay, so
Not much.
I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but I fear I'm going to have to a little bit, because I was a part of the negotiations that created the United Conservative Party. I know how it was structured. At that time, you could not formally merge political parties in Alberta, so some smart lawyer guy cooked up the idea that because these parties are also not-for-profit corporations or societies under the Alberta Societies Act, you would create a new party, and the Wild Rose Party and the PC Party would be owned by the new party, because there's the not-for-profit society or not-for-profit corporation entity, and then there's the entity registered with Elections Alberta. And they're more or less the same, but there's a legal difference between them. And so the UCP owned the Wild Rose Party, it owned the PC Party, and ran a paper candidate with no campaign to keep them registered through that first election. The UCP won, and then they amended the legislation to allow for a formal unification. And at that time, the PC Party, the Wild Rose Party, then officially disappeared from being paper parties, just gone. But one thing I remember in that whole process, because we were looking forward to it in the future so that it couldn't happen again, is the new UCP would obtain the trademarks of the Progressive Conservative Party and the Wild Rose Party. But Elections Alberta ruled, I was able to do this when I registered the Freedom Conservative Party. I was able to use the word conservative, but I argued that's distinct. There's already two conservative parties on paper, Progressive Conservative and United Conservative. So no one has a monopoly on the word conservative. And so I argued you could have the word Freedom Conservative. And then afterwards, as I was leaving and helping bring together Wexit with them, we got in Wild Rose Independence Party, which was distinct from Wild Rose Party or Wild Rose Alliance, because it had some modifiers in the name. So Elections Alberta said that they can use the name Progressive Conservative Association of Alberta, which was the exact word-for-word name of the old PC Party. That's an odd thing for Elections Alberta to agree to, but even if so, this could run into legal problems on the other side, because the UCP owns the trademarks of the Progressive Conservative Party, and it owns the trademarks of the Wild Rose Party. And so if you're trying to pass yourself off as the same thing, not Freedom Conservative or Wild Rose Independence, but as just Wild Rose or just Progressive Conservative, there's a good chance there's going to be some trademark issues there, independent from whatever Elections Alberta decides. So for now, the media is taking it as a granted that, yes, they're going to be called the PC Association of Alberta. Maybe they do get away with it, but I'm not convinced that this is the end of it. I think the UCP's lawyers are going to invoke their trademarks here, and there's going to be a trademark dispute about if they're allowed to be called that.
And so anybody who contributes to the new entity is going to see their money going into a trademark dispute instead of into active politics. I just say,
well, I can't say for sure, but
what confidence can you have in a couple of people who would embark on a scheme like this?
It's just strange. I mean, again, you'd think they would have seen this. They're bringing. It's going to be a tough task as a two-member caucus to have a party that's functional. Why bring on a bunch more headaches and baggage when you have the one advantage you have is a clean slate if you just come up with something new?
Yeah.
And
I do get, as I did, tapping into a somewhat of a known brand. With Wild Rose or Conservative. There's something to begin with there. Like the Republicans are tapping into a totally, I guess it's kind of a new drag, but they took on baggage of a completely different political party. But they got some name recognition out of it. Starting your brand from absolutely nothing, that's a huge task for a small party. You were in the early Wild Rose. That took a long time.
It went through a few incarnations. It was Alberta Alliance, and it was Wild Rose Alliance, and then it was just Wild Rose, and still your average person and now it's gone. Yeah.
So I can see if these guys wanted to call themselves something conservative or progressive something, but progressive conservative, you're just trying. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's taken on a lot of baggage, and I'm not sure it's legally sound. Lawyers are going to have to wade into that who know more. But I do know this was something very directly considered in the lead up to and during the negotiations that created the United Conservative Party so that exactly this kind of thing could not happen. I don't think they're out of the woods on actually calling themselves this yet.
It's sort of to use a rough one, same rationale of the Bolsheviks getting rid of the royal family in whole and the descendants and the works, just so you don't have that seed there to pop up and grow again. It's been eliminated. Not as vicious with this, of course, but the point was to make sure there's just no remnants of that party to blossom again and become a pain.
So let's talk up to either of you. Is there a market for a progressive conservative party? We're now in a strict two-party system. The left has united without mergers, but the left has most certainly united around the NDP in Alberta. The Liberals are dead. The Alberta Party is, for all intents and purposes, finally dead. But the Alberta Party was trying in the last two cycles, or was it three cycles, they were proclaiming we are the heirs to the Progressive Conservative Party. In 2019, they got Stephen Mandel, former PC cabinet minister and left-wing mayor of Edmonton. He led them from 4 seats to 0. Then they did 0, and then they've done 0 again. I put it that there's no, like every other province in Western Canada, there is no market for someone in the mushy middle between them. We're now clear center left and clear center right parties.
Well, I think there might be room if we're going back to kind of the balance we had in the 90s, but it's a real dangerous trip to get there. The political makeup in Alberta then was actually a strong liberal opposition, a strong progressive conservative, and the NDP would have 2 to 4 seats on and off throughout. But still, there was never quite a threat to the balance. In fact, the Liberals and NDP tended to scrap for their votes rather than the PCs. So the Conservatives could kind of comfortably stay in power and have that opposition. If that sort of balance could be re-achieved, but the risk is where they're going to draw their support from. Mm-hmm. If they come from the left, they pull their support from Nenshi because some people aren't necessarily comfortable with him or the NDP, then actually in some ways it could work okay. They could get a couple seats, but the UCP would still dominate the legislature. If they draw from the UCP, though, we know that their win was pretty darn narrow, and that could turn into something that brings the NDP in. I think there's a possibility of a balance, but it just depends on where they draw their support.
So Nigel, new and small parties are always they almost always fail. Every once in a while they succeed. But in the modern history of Canada, I cannot think of a single successful example of a new party succeeding from the middle. It's always from the margins. Tom Flanagan wrote about this. He called it invasion from the margins. You have to peel off something from a flank, the right flank or the left flank, or in Quebec, it could be something with ethnic and linguistic politics. But you have to offer something that no one else is, because the middle is where everyone's fighting. It's like Switzerland trying to join the First World War. They would just get crushed from both sides. There's no. It's like joining as a third party in the First World War. It'd be insane. You have to join from one flank or another to ever successfully invade, and even then, it normally doesn't work. I don't know. What do you think?
Switzerland must better to hold the gold of both sides. It's an unfortunate characteristic of the conservative mind that we favor being correct according to our own preconceptions. And, I'm with you here and here and here, but not here. So I've got to start my own party. And it is the achievement of everybody who put the UCP together and who now put the current premier into office, that they managed to get past and say, well, the important things are these, and the unimportant things can stay unimportant, and we'll deal with them if they come up. And what you have here is very similar to the problem federally, where, again, conservatives federally separate themselves out, got to have a consistent position on this or that, and it's wonderful. You live in a state of virtue, but you never hold power. And these gentlemen, bless their hearts, I mean, they may be right, they may be wrong. I really don't know the issue well enough, but there's if they want to be right, they can be right, but they won't be elected.
Okay, but they're not leaving over some great particular piece of policy, as far as I can tell.
No, they're not. That's my point. We divide over little things.
Well,
hold tenaciously to those little things.
We've had the Reform Party and the Wild Rose. Successful breakaways on the Conservative side are exclusively, not just in Alberta, but even federally, exclusively on the right flank of the party.
Yeah.
It is the rebellious side, and sometimes it's necessary.
From the right. And as you put it out, the Alberta Party has played that mushy middle game, and they've had legacy media just loves them. They've been the darlings of them for a decade. They just don't go anywhere. You've got to have something carved out. But then that's part of what Nigel's saying too. This is going to be difficult for these guys because they are seeming to be looking at the Alberta Party turf, which is a path to nowhere. And unless you can find one big issue to cling to, which they don't seem to have, it's not looking good.
I mean, the big policy difference I see is that, Guthrie and Sinclair, I guess the PCs, they're unconditional federalists. They sound kind of like Jason Kenney in that, like, any talk of independence is treasonous and we want nothing to do with it. And that's okay. I mean, that's
that's not what they're offering. They're saying, there was corruption and toxicity in the party.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. So, the UCP is so corrupt. We're going to sit under the banner of the party that was the most corrupt in the history of all Canada.
It keeps circling back to that bizarre choice of embracing the progressive conservatives.
The UCP is running a deficit, something they should be slapped up for. So let's sit under the banner of the party that returned Alberta to deficits. It just, I don't know. Cory, you got to get these guys on your show because, I mean,
I'll try. I mean, I already posted on X. Oh, look who they're trying to resurrect, and I had a picture of Redford and Lukasik together just to remind everybody. So
you had a better choice of getting them about half an hour ago.
We'll see. I've had the one gentleman
interview, but you'll be fair and reasonable.
I'll certainly reach out. It's worth talking about. Absolutely, I'm curious. I'll check.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see what happens. They might not get it under that name, though, in the end. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But either way, they're creating a party, and good on them. But also remember, that was just the name. To actually create a party is actually fairly difficult in Alberta.
Yeah, that's a whole other animal.
You generally, what you do is you take over a defunct party. That's what I did. You take over a defunct party, and you change its name and its constitution.
I think with 2 seats in the legislature, they might... Is it 2 or 3 you need?
It's like 3 or 4.
Is it that many? Okay. Because I know with a certain number of seats...
If you get official party status in the legislature, which is 4, then you get automatic party status.
Yeah. Otherwise, you got to petition and go through that whole process.
Yeah. Or you have to run like 60 odd candidates.
You got to be over half of the amount running.
Yeah, but if you want to have your party registered before an election comes, which is kind of the idea of it, to organize around it, you need to do it by petition, which can be done, but it's tough. Or you've got to have 4 MLAs.
Yeah.
Or you take over an old party.
That's how the Republicans did it with the Buffalo Party. They grabbed that.
Yeah. Wild Rose Independence Party was Freedom Conservative Party, which was many days. It's had many days. Yeah. There's a whole Alberta cottage industry of this stuff, of which we are too familiar.
We're guilty of participating.
Very guilty. Yeah. All I'm saying is have fun, guys.
Yeah.
Have fun. It's not fun.
No, I like this chair better.
Yeah. This is a bit easier. Okay. Speaking of comfy chairs, Bonnie Henry, the former Chief Public Health Officer of British Columbia, and Theresa Tam, Chief Public Health Officer of Canada and translator, they are being appointed to the Order of Canada, Cory.
Bureaucrats are getting the Order of Canada for doing their job, and people are questioning whether they even did the job well or not. It's unfortunate. Every country, I mean, it's in human nature. I think we like to have awards, recognition for our most outstanding citizens or people who made a mark or made a difference. And they have medals, they have awards. The Order of Canada is ours. I think there's the different breakdowns. There's the member of and the fellow to and the
Officers.
Yeah, officers. There's a few different levels of it. But it starts to really cheapen it when you're really kind of throwing it out so easily. I mean, it really should be very, very exclusive. And I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not Bonnie Henry or Theresa Tam were good at what they did. But even if they were good, they're just bureaucrats who did their job. I mean, they got caught in the circumstances. It was different. But you got to remember, Bonnie Henry, her job prior to COVID was trying to track down syphilis outbreaks at high school dances. I mean, this is not a high-level position as a health officer.
Sorry, was that actually what you did?
Well, I mean, you're just tracking disease outbreaks and wherever they might be. That's one of the speculative ones. So, I mean, I guess it's lended more spotlight to their positions from where they used to be in the basement area of the legislature as the health office.
If Premier Danielle Smith is watching, I want to nominate Cory for our next public health officer.
I don't want to do those interrogations, so maybe it is worth an Order of Canada. Somebody had to do it. But it just is odd choices. I don't know if they're trying to stir people up or if they really think these guys were heroes for just doing what was kind of in their mandate as bureaucrats. It's
it's a political statement. It's an endorsement that was the way to do it, and if it happens again, that's the way we'll do it next time.
Alberta's officer didn't get what was her name again with the bowl cut there?
She got fired. Dina Hinshaw.
Hinshaw, yeah. But that was some of the absurdity of the COVID time too. I remember people were going around with Dina Hinshaw T-shirts on and with a little superhero cape behind her, Super Dina. Thankfully, unlike the Rachel took off from what's her name with Friends, Hinshaw's haircut never took off as a style following. But these are just unusual people who were usually kind of backroom bureaucrats that became public personas due to that period. But whether that rates the Order of Canada, I find it pretty questionable.
Well, I've got to draw your attention to Barry Cooper. Dr. Barry Cooper, he wrote an article, we published it earlier this morning, and he asked this very question. The motto of the Order of Canada is they sought a better country. That's it's in Latin, but that's what it means. They seek a better country. So then you have to think, if you get the Order of Canada, it's because you were seeking a better country. And he asks the question, what is their vision of a better country then, based upon how they conducted themselves during the highly traumatic COVID? This is an endorsement by the government of Canada, who appoints people to the selection board who can be relied upon to know what would be a better country. They are now saying, these guys did great. Here's your Order of Canada each. Anybody else who wants a guide on how to get things done, how public health should be administered, what is the relationship between the state and the citizen? Is it one in which free citizens elect a government, or is one where a government has authority over the citizens? That's what there's a deeper significance to this award.
There's echoes here, I think, of when Henry Morgentaler was given the order. Whatever you think of him, whatever you think of the abortion issue, it was a decision for the Canadian establishment to put its stamp of approval on him and what he did, and try to end debate retroactively. And I think it's somewhat succeeded. I see this as, in some form, the Canadian political Laurentian establishment fighting against, those of us who do not accept, the official narrative here, and say, they want to say, overall, yeah, things were pretty good, and we're going to honor those who were the public faces of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would tie that to the Laurentian elite particularly. There was a lot of people in Ontario who didn't like this either. And it's more when we get into economics and the relationships between provinces and the federal government where the Laurentian thing, and of course on equalization, is where that comes into play. But I do think that there is a spirit of authoritarianism and a desire for control that animates the people who do well in the federal
It is
government.
telling other
They are
senior
saying-
bureaucrats, yeah.
They are
Your
saying,
path.
this is the way we want it done. Thank you very much, you two. Here's your little snowflakes.
But they toss it out to celebrities left, right, and center as well. Obscure
Otherwise,
authors.
the right kind of celebrities.
We'll get to that. Yeah, there we go.
Well,
And they exclude others. That really says a lot about what they do.
Like if I don't know, maybe I'll be wrong, but like, if I asked Grok to make a video of the most Canadian guy in the world, it conceivably could spit out Don Cherry, and it doesn't even need to invent the guy. He's just an old school hockey hoser, and he's never been it's not particularly political. He's just been considered political because he has, what are now considered to be retrograde old Canada views. But
The significant impact on our culture. Which
Huge.
I think is really-
Mhm.
he is a cultural icon and beloved by most people in Canada. Yet he doesn't get on, and it's full of these C-list celebrities. The kind of, like, I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but like think of think of like the Junos and stuff.
Jan Arden and the other CBC darlings.
Oh, but even ones way below that, people who like no one's heard of unless you go to like the Toronto Folk Festival or something. It's like people no one's heard of for crappy like CBC shows with actors that 1% of Canadians could probably still not name. These C-list Canadian celebrities who never made it internationally, they're in there as cultural icons of our cultural sovereignty, and they don't put in the one guy everyone can name, everyone can look at his face and say, I know who that is and what he's about.
Well, yeah, and it's I look at it kind of like almost the Time Person of the Year or whatever. Then, if you want to put it that way, it doesn't mean you have to like or dislike, but if they were significant and had an impact, it's worthy of a degree of recognition. And when you exclude Cherry, it really shows the bias.
It shows that they don't really value diversity.
No.
He's always their own
Absolutely
country.
not.
Yeah. So
Okay. Well, I wanted to get into the Alberta Police Force. We're just not going to have time today. So
suffice it to say, we're going to have one. Little bit by little bit.
We're taking the incremental approach, and good on
We're
her.
getting it done.
Yeah.
as long as we're making progress in the right way and it's aggressive enough, it's good. It's a step in the right direction.
So when you get a ticket, you're going to smile. This is the
As long as it's going to a proper Alberta cop, not a Fed. Okay. Also, I would. Oh, we don't have time. This is also a step in removing federal control of police to seize our guns.
Yes.
That needs to be recognized. God bless you, everyone behind creating the Alberta sheriffs here. This is
Prioritize their service.
Mhm. Thank you for your service. Okay, maybe we'll get into that more next week. Party shots, Nigel.
Oh, Mike. Well, maybe it's not fair to keep picking on the CBC, but let's face it. So, they've got an internal issue going on there, and they want to exclude other media from reporting on what they would cheerfully report on if it was the other media. And they've got some good people, but that's myself. They shoot themselves in the foot conceptually at the upper levels all the time. You just can't trust them.
All right.
Bang! That's my shot.
All right.
Well, just back to sort of the old progressive conservatives and their icons, Thomas Fabio Lukasik, who people remember as part of the left flank of the progressive conservatives in Edmonton.
Lukasik.
Yeah, well, if you pronounce it the Polish.
Lukasik.
Either way, he's come up. I'm kind of mixed on it. Okay, you pulled the trigger early on the referendum petitioning, and he's sort of playing the game of the act, trying to turn it into a negative, saying, well, campaign is would you agree to stay within Canada? And it looks like it might have thrown sand in the gears of the Alberta Prosperity's efforts. Maybe. It's kind of bizarre. It shows that there's more to be ironed out on what this process is going to do. But as I said, I don't know how well that's going to work for him. At the worst that's going to happen, it's going to be held, and it just means that the independent side will have to take the no on their campaign rather than yes. But either way, there's going to be a referendum on if he gets the 300,000 seats.
He never
which
will.
is very, very unlikely.
I actually, a lot of the legacy media are crowing about how much they love this. We get to crow when the Federalist side in Alberta can't get enough people to sign a petition saying we should stay in Canada.
People
That would be
people who think the people who think it's easy are people who have never done a real petition before.
Yeah.
I tell you what,
This is not an online click,
getting 100 real signatures on a petition, an official one, physically, is a 10-hour day of work. So 300,000. Good luck, Fabio.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to this when it's done, because we're going to be able to say Thomas Lukaszuk and the NDP, all these guys working together, could not get 300,000 people in a province of 4 million to sign a petition to stay in Canada. As we get to say that now.
Exactly.
So, it's delayed gratification, but I think maybe I'll have to eat my words, but I don't think
We'll have our I told you so's more than likely.
Yeah. Okay, well, speaking of I told you so, Leah Thomas has had his medals stripped for winning in women's swimming in the United States. This is just I don't know what's his proper name. I don't know. I'm just Thomas.
Sure.
So I mean, this has been a big controversy. He has taken medals away from women who have rightfully won in women's sporting competitions. And this is not a dainty little trans person. This is a man.
Yeah.
This is...
And he's still got all the bits and pieces. He didn't have any surgical alteration.
They could have made it more aerodynamic for swimming. So maybe
he was thinking there's a bit of drag. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Derek, but when I was at school, if you tried to win a race against the girls, they'd laugh. Your chick usually left the smooth branch.
Yeah. Oh, I'm surprised he didn't remove the keel from the boat for the race. But yeah. Anyways, that's good news for women, for sportsmanship, no pun intended, and for science and sanity. The world returning to a little more balance.
Amen.
The force, balance returning to the force.
Sometimes it can happen.
Yeah. Nigel, Cory, thank you very much. And thank all of you for joining us today. Remember, if you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, you're freeloading. Don't be a freeloader. Go to westernstandard.news right now. Click on subscribe. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year for unlimited access to all Western Standard content to support the work that we are doing here right now. In the newsroom behind me, we've hired a rash of new reporters. We've got more new reporters starting next week, and I think the week after that. We're beefing up the number of reporters we've got on staff, and we have to try really hard to find someone who can fill Nigel's shoes here. Thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless.